and welcome to the CEO Roundtable Bridging Asia. This is David Kim, your host. I'm founder and CEO of Untitled Chapter, Senator at the World Business Angels Investment Forum. I'm also CEO coach and entrepreneurship lecturer. In this podcast, I'm interviewing the entrepreneurs and business owners of rising startups and SMEs around the world. I'm going to feature the people I find inspiring and unique and introduce their interesting war story and their tactical advices they can share from their own success and failure. I hope you enjoy. Why don't you introduce about the interesting part of yourself and your background? For example, where were you born and where did you study and family background and nationality, etc.?
Sure. So I'm Sandra Locoh Donou. I was born in Paris in 1985 to Togolese parents. And just after that, I moved back to Togo, where my parents are from. And I studied there until I turned 14. And when I was 14 years old, so in the French system, your last 3 years of high school are kind of separate. We call it the lycée. And so I went to France to finish my high school. So I spent 3 years in a Parisian suburb. Then, I went on to graduate from a bachelor in economics and join a business school, which allowed me to have what they called at the time an intercontinental track. Mm-hmm. What that means was that it was a really nice program. Now looking back at it, I'm like, this was really great because this was back in 2004. Mm-hmm. And it allowed me to go study for a semester in Canada, another semester in Shanghai, China, and another semester in Delhi, India. So that was really great. I finished that with a master in finance, and it was really a great experience.
Yeah, sounds like a very great and diverse program, which make you exposed to so many different culture, colorful culture, right?
Yeah, clearly, it's really, I really love this quote saying that education is not just about knowing, it's about knowing to know. And I feel like this program really stretches, it really changes my assumptions on a lot of things, like my perception of China, my perception of India, my perception of what Canada can look like. And I think it just allowed me to learn that in life in general, the way you start to know is by knowing that you don't know. and I really like that.
Yes, that's good. I mean, good expression about the knowledge, right?
Yeah.
That's a good expression. Yeah, but it feels like you move through so many different culture, right? I mean, even when you're young, then it's amazing how could you adapt to a different culture swiftly. So how many languages do you speak, by the way?
So not a lot. I speak French. That's my mother tongue. Mm-hmm. I speak a language of South Togo called Mina, which is the commercial language we speak in South Togo. And I speak English as well. I will consider the languages that I learn in school, like Spanish and Chinese, because I have not been conversant in the last 7 to 10 years. I won't say that I speak them.
Right.
But I can.
So, I mean, but for business in Kenya, I assume that you speak English, right?
Yes, I speak English. In Kenya you can get by with English everywhere. My sons are trying to teach me Kiswahili, which is the language that is spoken here in Kenya, throughout Tanzania, in some parts of neighboring countries here. But it's a national language actually of Tanzania, and in Kenya it's widely spoken as well.
Yeah. Personally, I lived in 6 countries Asia. So I try to learn the local language whenever I move there. But what I felt that sometimes I'm confused. Like living in Thailand, I spoke to Thai people in Chinese, right? And then sometimes they mix up the Chinese word with the Thai words, something like that. You don't have that problem?
So I have that problem with my husband sometimes because my husband is from Jamaica and American Jamaican, and
Mm-hmm.
he also speaks French.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes, I kind of mix, like I'll start a conversation in French with him and then I'll put some English words. But I try, because we wanted to raise our kids to both know English and French. I
That's
kind of
good.
have the discipline now to, when I'm speaking to my kids, I only speak to French to them. And
Okay.
so now I'm trying also, when I'm speaking to my husband, to start with a language and finish with that same language,
Yeah.
wherever that is. So I'm trying to have discipline because, as you said, I think it's very hard to keep a track of languages when you're always in moving environment. Like, for instance, I realized that for the last 18 months, I haven't been reading a lot in French. And I can see that whenever I have interaction in French, business interaction, my vocabulary is not as great as it was like 7 years ago.
Yes, I can
So
imagine. I can
yeah,
imagine.
so I'm trying to get better at that, and
Yeah.
also try to learn, or kind of dive into more languages that I already know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, instead of just being superficial in a lot of languages, if I can say
Right.
that.
Yeah. Sounds interesting. Okay. Why don't you talk about your business? Can you tell us a little bit about your Finno business?
Sure,
How
sure.
how, how it work and what the average profile of your customer looks like and the kind of crops and the annual revenue. I mean, any information you want to share with us.
Sure. So I started Finlo almost a year ago. It was October 1st, 2019. I've been thinking about starting something in this industry for quite a while. I spent the last 12 years working in finance, and the last seven specifically on this continent in Africa, where I'm based out of Nairobi, and that's where I started Finlo. And I've always been in, working for companies or investors interested in financial inclusion and in ultimately, reducing poverty on the continent. And so one of the things that I've realized is that there was a lot of emphasis made by development financial organization on
Mm-hmm.
the importance of small businesses.
Yeah.
But yet, when you look at the small businesses in sub-Saharan Africa, you realize that not a lot of them gets to grow. And in specific sectors where we have more than 70% of our population, which is, agriculture, we don't see a lot of, not success stories from SMEs, but you don't see a lot of SME growing and thriving in that sectors, and also moving up the value chain, maybe acquiring other companies to consolidate. You don't see that a lot for small businesses. You see that for a large company like, Olam is a very known company here in the agri-value chain, but you don't see that for other smaller businesses. So I went from, the problem with small businesses is access to finance, to actually there is more to it than that. There is access to finance, there is access to market, and there is also access to growth. How do you
Mm-hmm.
grow as a small business
Right.
in our frontier market when you are an operator on the agri-value chain? That was the first question that led to the creation of Finlo. And Finlo is trying to provide answers to those issues. And our answer is to say, we're going to build a platform where we're going to provide access to market, access to capital, and
Mm-hmm.
access to growth. And how are we going to do that? Because one of the biggest issues in sub-Saharan Africa, and I'm happy to hear your thought on what has happened to businesses in Thailand and in countries where you have lived in Asia. I'm really
Mm-hmm.
curious.
Yeah.
But what I've realized is that here you have this conundrum where banks who could lend to SMEs are finding it hard to lend to them because the unit economics of each deal does not make a lot of sense for them. It's most of the time small businesses, especially on the agri-value chain, which again, it's the reason why we keep talking about agri-value chain at Finlo. It's because it's 70% of our population. And we also think that that's where most of the value and the wealth of our continent is, in that sector. And so we realized that banks didn't want to lend to small and medium-sized businesses because
True.
it doesn't make sense for them in terms of unit economics.
Yep.
a lot of corporations who could be sourcing things from small and medium-sized businesses find it so hard to deal with them because of operational deficiencies and because also of the nature of, those corporates' cash cycle. So when you're selling to a big corporate like Unilever, Total, whatever, they're not going to pay you on delivery service. So sometimes they will need months, sometimes they will need 6 to pay you. So, and you as a small business, you still need to survive and you still need to pay your bill, and you don't have 6 months burn rates ahead of you. And so we realized that all the people who could be providing access to growth to small businesses were actually shying away from providing that access because it was just too hard for them to transact with those small businesses. And so that's where we come in. We come in to make sure that we enable the transaction by, aggregating the SME supply, and by also providing them with tools to be able to work not only with corporates, but also with financial institutions. So technically, Finlo is, I'll say, a transaction enabler for small and medium-sized businesses to help them access growth and capital.
Yeah, sounds like great objective and business idea help the agriculture farmer in Africa, especially it's a sector like agriculture. They have a very limited access to banking and financial resources, right?
Yeah, we'll see. For now, we're doing well. We have a bit of traction already. We are in 3 countries actively. And, today our clients are mainly agri-processors. So we have a producer of meat, both poultry and red meat. We also have traders. So we have a rice trader in the portfolio. We also have a small processor of cashew nuts. So for now, the idea is not to restrain the pool of our financing to specific crops or to specific value chain within the agri value chain. We're trying to make sure that we are also serving domestic markets and not only export market. Right?
Yes.
And that we're doing that because we also realize that food security is an issue, and we need to make sure that we're not only favoring exports, even if export has a lot of benefits. Well, it provides hard currencies, it provides a lot of great stuff. So, for instance, a country like Togo is one of the biggest exporter of organic produce to Europe, but it will also be great if over time, the demand for those same organic produce is domestic and not only at export. So those are the things we're looking at. We're also working with companies that are, service provider to the value chain. So for instance, in our portfolio, we have a company that provides internet connectivity and electricity in rural areas using LED technology. So we're also working with them. So they're not producing vegetables or produce or grains, but their clients are ultimately rural SMEs, which we need for us to be able to have a comprehensive set of clients and diversify our risk.
Yes, I guess agriculture is a huge potential. I mean, in the future, as of now, and then especially is Africa may have a bigger potential for that sector. So sounds like you have a lot of potential to expand into many directions with your business, I guess.
Definitely. I think we started with the countries I mentioned, which are Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, mainly, and Benin, because of the stability of the currency. So we basically launched our platform in the middle of COVID, and we realized, okay, there are a lot of things that are shaky right now, a lot of things that we don't know how tomorrow will look like. So
you jump in the business, new startup at the most challenging time, right?
Yeah, completely. Well, I didn't plan COVID.
If you, survive, overcome all the challenges, I think you only have, silver lining in the sky, I guess.
I hope so. I think that's it's actually a great time to, I think, launch a company if you're able to, because I think one of the things that I love about entrepreneurship is you have a lot of variable that you have to work with. Everything is super dynamic, especially on the markets on which we are working. Nothing is set into stone. And sometimes it can be really frustrating, but at the same time, that's where a lot of your value lies, is how do you react? How do you anticipate? And how do you maintain your sanity in all those moving parts? So you can decide, and that's one of the things that we tried to do. We decided to start in markets where some things were fixed. And so one of the things, as someone who wants to provide on the platform we're building, we want to provide access to capital. And access to capital is really related to currency volatility. Mm-hmm. And so we chose these specific countries in Francophone West Africa, not only because I'm from Togo, but because those countries have the same currency, and that currency is pegged on the euro.
Okay. So which countries' currencies are pegged to the euro or US dollar? Which country in Africa?
So you have 8 countries in Francophone West Africa which are pegged to the euro. You have more, but the one that I know of, which are really the peg has been working now for over 26 years. Are, you have Togo, Benin, Burkina Faso, Mali, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, and I think Guinea-Bissau is also part of them, and Niger. And so those countries have the advantage of having that currency pegged to the euro. Okay. And so you can attract investments in euro or in other currency, knowing that peg is in place. And for us, for the near future, will still be. So that's for us, that was something important. A lot of people don't really understand, why is it important to have that peg? Well, it's just provide a bit of stability. And although I'm really bullish on countries like Ghana and Nigeria, the issue is that their currency has been very volatile, especially in Nigeria, because of how, Nigeria, 80% of the Nigerian economy is driven by the oil resources. So, any price fluctuation in oil has tremendous impact on the currency.
I see.
And so I love Nigeria. I think it's, everyone will love a country like Indonesia, right? Like where you have a big population, very educated people, a lot of potential in terms of, small businesses. But we were like, to start with Nigeria will be really hard. And I'm happy we didn't start with Nigeria because the currency has depreciated 30% in the last 10 months.
I see.
I feel like as you start, you also have to be cognizant of the limitation of what you can and cannot do. You start with limited resources and you want to show results with those limited resources. So we started with our own money, our family money, and some friends' money. And so it's important that with the small capital that we have, we're able to show that there is a market. We have found products, clients want those products, and now we want to scale. This is where we are now.
Okay. So, putting aside a potential of the agriculture or trade financing, what you are doing related to agriculture, how about the competition? Do you have a competitor in the trade financing business or the trade financing for the agriculture business?
Sure. I think you have competition. The key thing for us, I will say on our segments, we're looking at companies making above $30,000 per year in revenue and below $500,000 a year in revenue. And companies that are looking for between $10,000 to $50,000 in, working capital or long-term capital financing, but mainly working capital. 80% of the requests are working capital. So on that specific segment, which is small companies, they can employ up to 50 people max. You don't have a lot of people, and that's also why we entered that market. It's because it's a difficult one, but we think that, this is where most of the value is. You don't have a lot of competition. Why? Because the unit economics are tricky. And our answer to that trickiness is actually to bring in technology and to aggregate and to work a lot with partners. because we think that unlike banks who want to own the relationship to their clients and therefore they're not willing to share with other financial institutions, if we are in the middle, we are willing to share our clients with others, right? Because our ultimate goal is for our clients to grow. Of course, we need to pull together for them to grow. We'll pull it. We don't have the same incentive like banks who will have, or microfinance institution who will want to control their relationship to their clients, because at one point, as I always say, when you have a good business and you have a good transaction record and you have a track record that can be verified by a third party, it's very easy to access credit. And so money just becomes a commodity. And so for banks, it's critical for them to really always keep the relationship with their clients, because they never want their capital to become a commodity to their client, because then they know their client would just swap and change. And so because we have that unique positioning of, we don't need our clients to be our only clients. We can share our clients' value with other partners. And so that helps us really reduce the cost of acquisition of our clients. And also it helps us reduce how we assess clients in terms of, willingness to perform their obligation and ability to perform their obligations. So that's really how we're looking at it, is to say, in the market where we are, you don't have a lot of players serving $10,000 to $50,000 need of working capital or need of access to the market. You have a lot of microfinance institutions. You have a lot of banks focusing mainly on corporate and government needs. That's important to say. A lot of local banks actually finance working capital for the government and its agencies, and then for corporates. And then they make a lot of money out of that. So they don't see the need to finance the small mom and pop shop or the small agri-processors transforming rice into porridge or whatever.
Yeah, that sounds like a popular concept of open business model, right? Open collaboration. I think they make more sense, I think.
I think now the great thing is that technology has allowed us to really do those businesses and to experiment on those business model without too many risks, right? Like now through, the ability to interface with different systems to really monitor things from a computer, you can put a lot of trust in those relationships, in those partnerships. Before it was, you had to trust your partner and, and just assume that he will send you the right reports and send you the right clients. Today we can agree on things and the computer will or the program, should I say, the software will automatically select out of a pool of a lot of businesses, the right businesses that we have agreed that's the one criteria we agreed on. So I think the big realization for me is that you can use what I call a phygital model, which is a mix of physic and digital, to really put a lot of trust in a system where you have a lot of partners. And by doing so, reducing the cost of operating a business that is geared towards people that don't have a lot of disposable reserve and don't have a lot of money to pay for those services.
Yeah, it sounds like a new normal, right? That's a reality of a new normal. We have to adapt in a way of working with others and then serving the client, I guess.
Completely. Yeah. I believe a lot in that model. I think, and that's why we always call Finlo a B2B platform rather than just, people who want to put us in a marketplace. I don't think we're a marketplace. I think we're a platform because we're plugging with other partners. So for instance, we work with business management softwares solution available on, Android and on other platforms. And those, we have a partnership in place so that they can push client to us and we can also push client to them, because a lot of businesses who are using application, they record their transaction, they record their bookkeeping, they record payments they receive through their mobile wallets. And so we're able to interface with them and say, today we have 10 clients who have made over the last 6 months more than $100,000 and they're in need of working capital of $25,000. And we're able to verify that. And thanks to that, our cost of acquisition all of a sudden is really, really small because all the underwriting of that client is more or less done by the platform, and we just need to verify some behavioral aspects. And so those are the things I'm talking about, or having partnership with some telecommunication companies which are also providing mobile wallets, and see how through, of course, the client has to agree or the prospect has to agree, but if we can access your wallet and see your payment and see your disbursement, then we have a rough idea of your cash flows. And based on that cash flow, we can actually, provide capital for you if you are in need of working capital to execute on an LPO. So those are the things we talk about when we're talking about working with partners.
Yes. Interestingly, last month, I held a webinar titled How to Leverage Partnership to Grow Your Business. So I covered a lot of things you just mentioned. But in reality, small company, SME, startup, they should leverage the partnership collaboration with working with other company to, facilitate their growth. But in reality, large company like S&P 500 company, they use more partnership and collaboration with other. The reason I mentioned during the seminar is because small or SME company, they are not confident working with others. They concerned about a lot of issues and the negative result out of that. So that's the thing. So I mentioned that because of concern, you cannot ignore the good option, best option for your growth. You need to try to solve the issue, proactively to leverage that option.
Yeah, no, completely. I think what you said made a lot of sense. I think, we realize even ourselves, we float around some of our clients the idea of having a kind of mutual fund for them, just in case, you need emergency cash for a problem other than, just the business as usual. And it was interesting to realize that when you were asking those small businesses to put some of their money together so that if one of them needed some cash for an emergency, whether personal or for their business, they don't need to give the reason. Most of the question around that when we floated the idea was, well, who are going to be the other businesses? And I was like, people like you, other businesses like you. And then they were more afraid of, why would I be helping someone who is also another small businesses? And that's where you realize that there is sometimes a misunderstanding of what partnering means. And it's a win-win for a partnership.
Yes.
It's supposed to be a win-win overall for each party involved. Otherwise, it's not a partnership. But a lot of businesses are still having issues wrapping their head around the idea of partnering with someone who's in the same space.
Yeah. In Asia, actually, the long time ago, like East Asia, like Korea, Japan, China, we used to have a very traditional concept of a credit union where each participant or member help each other, lend to each other. That concept quite similar to the credit union in modern world, but the more flexible and private, more based on the personal trust. So try to protect each other. That actually very, very strong. That is an area modern financial institution cannot support.
So it's interesting because on the personal level here on the continent, those credit unions exist and some of them are very powerful. You have, some families and some villages who have very powerful credit unions. When it comes to business, it's completely different. And that's what I find interesting is that when you ask a whole set of businessmen or businesswomen to come together to actually have this experience that they successfully made in countries like Madagascar, where a lot of businessmen put their money together and created a very powerful credit union. I find that in some places in sub-Saharan Africa, it's more difficult.
Yeah. Okay. So next question is, what is your vision and the long-term growth plan for your business? What do you want to achieve at the end of the day?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, our motto has always been that we want to actually make small businesses wealthier.
Mm-hmm.
And because we think that there is a lot of wealth that is locked into those businesses, and we want to unlock that and create a generation of entrepreneurs who are able themselves to then impact their own ecosystem in a very positive way. Myself, I'm the daughter of two entrepreneurs, and I see how, creating wealth through your businesses can generate multiple positive impact, not only on your kids, but also on your environment, on your ecosystem as a whole. So we really want to impact business in a scalable way, if I can say that, but at scale. So what do we mean by at scale? The idea is to really touch 10,000 small businesses over the next 5 years. And we think that we can achieve that by selecting rigorously the countries where we want to operate, and also by making sure that we are entering into meaningful partnerships with stakeholders on the value chain. So 10,000 businesses we want to impact. We want to be able to improve directly through the businesses we're financing and to the businesses we're providing access to market to. We want to be able to impact the livelihood of, the farmers on the value chain where we're operating. Today, if I take the example of a country like Togo, the annual revenue per farmer per year is, in a good year, close to $500 per year. And
$580.
$500 a year.
Oh, wow. Very
So
small. Yeah.
Very small. And so that I'm talking about smallholder farmers, which I believe constitute like 90% of our farmer base. I don't know how are things in Asia or in the countries where you've lived, like Thailand, but in Togo, in Benin, you have a lot of small holding farms. We don't have large scale farming. So farmers have, maybe 1 hectare, which is like 2 acres, 2 to 4 acres max. And so these are the people making sure that we eat and that we eat healthy food. And so you have to kind of incentivize them to produce good food and to produce things that can make our population grow and be nurtured. And so, by squeezing them, we're actually doing the whole population a whole disservice, because if you're squeezing the person at the base of your system, which is, as human beings, as of today, we're still eating food. We're not yet like on fully liquid or supplement diets. We're still eating whole food, and those whole foods are produced by farmers. And I'm seeing this even, on the continent, where by squeezing them, we're actually putting in place wrong incentive, because if you're not paying well the farmer at the base of the pyramid, well, he's not going to be able to produce good food, and he's not going to be able to like his job, because farming is very hard wherever you are in the world, really, because as you know, you're subject to a lot of risk, climate risk, all those risks that you don't always control. And so you have to be able to make a good livelihood, to be able to still be in that job and enjoy it, and have to train other people so that they also will enjoy farming and producing good food. But if we don't do that, what we're going to end up with is whole areas of our countries will be deserted, and everyone will want to come to the city. And then, the food that is going to be produced is either going to be highly commercial and sometimes highly superficial and, synthetic. And we're not sure yet of the impact of those modes of production on our livelihood. And so for me, one of the key things for Finlo is also to be able to impact the livelihood of those farmers in a significant and positive way by increasing their annual disposable income.
Yeah, I like your way of thinking and plan. Yes, I agree. The farmer, they need to have a dream and plan and motivation, and then incentivize to grow the business, right? And what I have observed in the Asia, like some of the agriculture related business and then startup, they are much more profitable than high tech. by, managing the supply chain, it's disrupting the supply chain. Because I think my opinion is because the agriculture business hasn't been improved or innovated for so long time, right? Because everybody focus on high-tech technology and those things, right? So probably if someone has a right business model and then working with right team, then maybe a much more rewarding area, I guess. Yeah.
I fully agree with you. And I think you really hit the nail on the head, because I think we have a very beautiful continent in terms of arable land available, and in terms also of the population. Like 70% of Africa is rural. So it's amazing when you really think about it, is that we have a lot of people who are next to their land, living off their land, and yet those people are not able to see their lives as fulfilling one, because we are not rewarding them with what they deserve. And because as you said, the agriculture sector has not seen tremendous leap in technology, or at least they're not shared. Maybe they're still in labs. They're not shared widely, or some of the technology is not yet affordable to many farmers. We have this focus now, and I'm seeing it even on the continent, where a lot of the focus is on a lot of companies in the tech space. But I think that the tech space can also look at agriculture, which still employs 70% of our population, and see how we can increase the livelihood of that population, because we're seeing it. A lot of people will leave those rural places and come to urban areas because the economics don't work for them. There are not a lot of hospitals, there are not a lot of schools. Access to the grid is an issue. So unless we provide them with the ability to say, I'm not going to be on my farm from 5 a.m. to 4 p.m. and only make $100 a month or $200 a month. I think once we change that trajectory, and all of a sudden you're on your farm and you're able to make, $500 a month or more, then a lot of more people will want to stay in the rural area and will still want to grow their farm and, know more about the technology available, because they know there is a market for their produce.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is, looking at your past background, you always work in the 5-star corporate hotel, right? Financial institution. And you decided to jump in a jungle. I can imagine those two are very, very different. So what is the idea for you? How did you come up with this business startup idea?
Sure. So yeah, you're right. I started my career in a French bank, an investment bank. And as you said, I think it was a great place to start. Like, you learn the rules, the fundamentals, and ultimately you learn about relationships and, how you should think about colleagues, how you should think about business partners and things like that. And I'm really happy I did that. And then I moved on and went to a debt fund. And then from that debt fund, I went to work for another organization. And for me, I was more seeing it as tools that I was acquiring to be able to face whatever choice I will make. Similar to my education, I always feel like, for me, life is about acquiring tools so that whatever comes your way, you will be able to, if you fall, you'll be able to go back up. And if you're walking, you can walk better and eventually run. And so the key for me in everything that I do is to say, okay, what am I learning from this? Because I do think that you're never really always prepared to what life or business will bring to you. And so the only thing you can do is make sure that you have a good toolbox. And so those were, years of building my toolbox. And then a year and a half ago, I felt like I was ready to venture on my own and to basically put solutions in place where I think that there were big needs, and those needs were not being addressed, because it's very hard when you're always in a 5-star hotel, as you say, to go and, mount your tent yourself. It's very hard to say, I'm going to give up the comfort of having a salary every month and having a really nice career trajectory to tackle what I think is one of the biggest issues of our continent, which is how do we become wealthier? and how do we make our businesses more prosperous? How do we make sure that our smallholder farmers are living a good wage, are earning a good wage? And how do we make sure that as a whole, small business communities are able to trade, are able to exit their company, sell, pass on the wealth that they made to other businesses or to their family or to the states. But the key thing for me was, okay, I think now I have a good toolbox and I want to apply it to one of our most critical issues, which is the creation of wealth. I think among the business community, because I think one of the things that, especially in French-speaking Africa, there is this idea that wealth comes from your government. And one of the things that I'm learning, and I've learned over the past 7 years, is that my conviction is that the wealth of our nation will come from private endeavors. And so with that in mind, and having worked for the last 7 years in financial inclusion and on the agribusiness value chain, I invested in a lot of agribusiness companies. I was like, you now have a set of tools where you can really start to implement some of the change you want to see. And the other thing that made me double down on that was also to see the leap in technology. Like in the past 4 years, it's crazy what can be done with an application, with a software, and also the penetration of mobile phone and smartphone was still behind, but it's crazy. Like in Kenya today, I don't carry cash. I do everything with my phone. Even when I don't have my debit card, I have my phone. And this is such a painless and it's so smooth to transact that I was like, the leap in technology, the access to mobile phone, the access to smartphone, the increase of internet coverage, we can really reduce the cost of doing businesses with small businesses. And that for me was really the trigger. And I was like, being from Togo, having worked on the continent, I know firsthand the issues. I've worked with small businesses, I've worked with corporations, I've worked with banks. And so I was like, you're actually in a great seat to put together a team that's going to tackle one of the biggest issues of the continent. And so you're sometimes in this framework of time where you feel like you're lucky to be there. And that's how I feel. And that's what led me to create Finlo. I felt like, I've worked on the continent. I'm from here. I was privileged enough to see some of the issues, to work with different types of stakeholders, and to be able to access technology and to see what technology can do to reduce cost of transaction. And so that's really where it comes from. It's that all those tools that I've acquired in those 5-star hotel are now helping me mount a tent very quickly and prepare my bricks very quickly, and allow me to also go and find other people who are willing to go on this mission, really, to make businesses wealthier.
Yeah. I have, in fact, I work and live in that same type of a 5-star corporate hotel very long time, many decades. Looking back on those days, I think that is very nice to stay that kind of place, but it is not real world, right? You're very protected and you're spoiled by all the convenience and amenity, right? Running a startup or the business, you are in real world and interacting with the real people on the street. I think that's more rewarding side of entrepreneurship, I guess.
I agree. I think the great thing about entrepreneurship is that you always have to adapt to your audience. Yes. And your audience varies a lot. It goes from a small business to, partnership we want to put in place, which are with big banks, with NGOs, with corporate.
Yes.
And so, and as you said at the beginning of this conversation, I was privileged enough to have always been on the move, always tried to adapt to different situations, whether it's through my own personal family background or through my work experiences or my, education experiences. And I think that's really a tool that I'm using every day now, is to be able to sit across someone who hasn't gone to business school, but who is doing great business and who needs, capital and growth, and sitting across from the CEO of a bank and convincing him that all his procurement should go through our platform. So those are the things that we're trying to achieve. And I think the great thing about entrepreneurship is that it just allows you to really realize that all you have is the ability to learn. And then once you have that and that desire to always be curious, always be listening, I think
Yes.
if you're listening, then you will have your product market fit. If you're willing to learn, you will always pivot and always go where you think you're needed. And
Right.
so you will have money to pay your employees, and you will also have money to grow. That's my belief.
Yes. I totally agree with you. Yeah. Welcome to the real world then.
Yeah.
Welcome to the real world. I mean, living the five-star hotel. Yeah.
Completely.
Yes. How many hours a day do you work on average? Can you describe your typical day?
Sure. On average, I'll work 50 to 60 hours a week,
Wow.
sometimes less
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes more. So, for instance, I know May and June were really, I worked a lot, but because there was a lot of things to do with regard to putting in place certain things. And then we were also onboarding a lot of clients who wanted to be vetted. Right now, I'm working more on fundraising, making sure that the house is proper, that all our processes are very clear, everyone understands them, so that any investors who are interested in our company can come and see how we do things. I'm also putting a bunch of resume of CVs together of people that I've had interaction with, or people that I know and who I know will probably be interested by Finlo vision, so that by the time we have the money to execute on our scale, then I can reach out to them. So all those things that are long-term things I'm doing now, because obviously, things have slowed down a bit in terms of capital markets available for companies like ours. But I also know that those are very important things when you want to attract investors. So we're working on that. We're also working, obviously, with our existing clients, making sure that we're sharing anything that we know could improve their business with them, monitoring them as well, because as I always say, trust doesn't exclude control. So we're making sure that our controls are in place, that we have regular check-in with them. I also spend time with my teammate in Togo, which is our base in West Africa, and making sure that we're building a company and not just Sandra's idea was Finlo. I'm trying to have more people buying in building a community that serves a bigger community. And so that takes time. And I'm doing also a lot of reading because, as I was telling you, I think the key thing about, for me, entrepreneurship is also all the mental strength that is required, because you have some drawbacks sometimes and you have to say, okay, how do we navigate this time, and how do I keep my motivation high, and how do I still persevere, because we know there is market fit. Now it's about convincing the right partners, it's about convincing the right stakeholder and putting this thing at scale. And you have some hurdles, you always have some. And so one of the things I work on as well is making sure that myself and my team is equipped with tools to navigate relationship and to navigate our own drive and ambition, because that's really important too. Like at the beginning of a company, it's only people and systems, and you don't have a lot of support, so you have to be your own resource. And to have that, you have to build that every day, whether it's through reading from other experience, whether it's through listening to podcasts, which I do a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts on other entrepreneurs who are achieving things. I also listen a lot to how nutrition and all those things can help you just be a better mentally and physically, because healthy is really key for me.
Yeah. Okay. So next question is, if you are asked to give an advice to young people who are interested in launching a startup business today, what would you say are the top 3 skills needed to be a successful entrepreneur?
Sure. I think the first thing for me is really to be mentally healthy. I think it's important because if you're starting something new, and for me, I know that when you have a conviction and you found an issue that you want to solve, you're going to have a lot of people around you who are scared for you because they're like, why would you leave a good job? Why don't you go find a job?
Right.
Why don't you, especially your parents, your friends, they love you. They don't want to see you suffer. And so they will push you to the safe havens. So they will say, no, go get a job like everyone else. And then in 15, 20 years, or when you retire, you'll go and do whatever you want to do, but you need to be financially secure first. And so you have this thing in your belly that tells you, this is what I want to do. And I'm willing to go 2 years or a year without a salary to do that. And there will be times where the business or the venture you're trying to build is not responding as well as you want it to be. You're not seeing the growth you wanted to see when that was just an idea in your mind. Or worst, what you think was a problem is actually not a problem for your target audience. They don't see your solution as a solution. They just see it as a feature. And you have to live with that and find other ways to still make your business work. And for that, for me, the key thing is your mental health and how realistic you are and how quickly you can adapt and how quickly you can evolve and maybe launch a new company. Because if you like the idea of building something from scratch, the great thing is to become a serial entrepreneur. You can build a lot of things, sell them, or, go on, move on to something else. And so I think for me, mental strength is a key thing. And that is fueled, of course, by our own personal history, what we eat, what we do, how we exercise, and things like that. So that for me is the first thing. The second thing is, as my husband always say, always be selling, whether it's you're selling you or because you're selling. By selling, I mean, talk about your businesses to people. And so that, they know what you're doing. They can send help or clients your way or investors your way. But if you're never talking about what you're doing, then people will not be able to know how they can help you. And I think that's a key thing, because when we start at the beginning, we are very shy about our own ideas, where some of us might be afraid of competition or afraid that, because we don't have a confidentiality agreement in place, I cannot tell you this and that. Well, if your idea is only protected by a confidentiality agreement and not by the fact that you're going to be the one executing on the idea, then maybe it's not a great idea for you.
That's very true. I mean, these days, I know that even global many company, they intentionally don't register patent for their new technology because it doesn't protect. Most important is that they move fast, launch the product in the market, and then capitalize that opportunity fast. That's more important than try to protect the knowledge, idea, or technology, right?
No, it's exactly it. So I will say the second thing is, sell your business, talk about your business. One of the things that I do, for example, is that I'm always talking about my business with my partner, my friends. And I realized that the person that has been of the biggest help is actually my neighbor. She has connected me to so many investors, giving me really great ideas. And if my assumption was to say, oh, Lindsay is doing only English-speaking Africa right now, and she's not doing French-speaking, and I shouldn't be talking to her, well, I wouldn't have got valuable feedback from her, very valuable. And so expose yourself to others and sell, because you need people to know about what you're doing. The third thing is manage your cash. A dollar is a dollar, especially for entrepreneurs who have been working in 5-star hotels, as you call them. We tend to forget sometimes that there are other ways if you don't have money. And you have to have that hustle mentality that I'm not going to spend $1,000 on this, because that $1,000 is actually a year of my subscription to G Drive, which allowed me to talk to 1,000 investors or 1,000 clients, or, send, 5 GB of email, which I really need, and etc. And so I think managing your cash, really keep a tab of, what I'm spending, what is coming in. And managing your cash also means finding cash. And One of the things that you might think of when you don't have revenues is how can I use the knowledge that I am acquiring or the tools that I'm acquiring to make sure that I'm bringing in cash for me to still be able to find my product market fit, for instance. So those are the things. So for instance, I'm still doing advisory work for non-bank financial institutions and for agribusinesses because I'm not going to wait for investor to come on my timing. I'm actually going to attract them. And to attract them, I need to show them that I'm really dedicated to what I'm doing and that cash is really important. It's the blood of any business.
Yes.
But without, when you don't have blood, well, you can try to find and transform your nutrition into blood. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I think are the key, for me, some of the things that I will say are really important. Be healthy, talk about your business, sell your business to people, and then manage whatever resource you have.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, I guess. Yeah. Okay, next question is, who has been your greatest inspiration?
It's a tricky one because, especially for me, I've moved a lot. My friends, my family, my former colleagues, my current colleagues, a lot of people are, on the daily, some podcasts I listen to are really helping me, go places where I thought I will never go because of my own fear. So I will say that, one of my biggest inspirations is actually gratitude, because I realized that whenever I stepped into areas where I was afraid of going in terms of my own capacity, of my own limits, I was always really well rewarded. I was really afraid when I started my career. I always wanted to be in private equity, investing in, commodities and agribusinesses, but I didn't find a job in that space. And I was like, well, all my studies, my thesis was around that. So what am I going to do? And I eventually ventured into investing in real estate and I loved it. And the rewards have been amazing. Then eventually I ended up working for debt fund for agribusinesses. But what I want to say is that my inspiration comes from my own failures as well. I think personally, I've had a lot of failure, which really helped me realize that it's not that bad. Mm-hmm. You have learned so much from that it's okay to try again something new. And I think that for me, entrepreneurship is that every day you're trying something new. And new doesn't mean a whole thing new, but there are new things that you're trying to make sure that your business is always innovating, always listening. Yeah, I think say that gratitude and my own failure, my own personal, mishappening.
Yeah, I like the answer. It sounds very creative. Yes. yeah, I like the answer. I think the next question is, there is so many countries in Africa, right? Larger economy, Nigeria, South Africa, Ethiopia, Ghana. But how did you decide to live and set up the business in Kenya?
Yeah, I think that's really easy. So I moved to Kenya 7 years ago. And one of the things that I realized about Kenya is that it's a great place to keep your hope high in terms of the adoption of new ways. It's a really cool thing when you think about it. Like 15 years ago, there was no M-Pesa in Kenya. 13 years ago, they started this thing. And it has changed a lot of things for the smoothness and how easy it is to transact. And I'm talking about M-Pesa, which is the mobile wallet owned by the biggest telecom company here. But you have other places where that is true. Like there is this capacity of adopting tools that helps you smooth the way you live and the way you transact that I really like. So that's the first thing that I really like about Kenya is just that the environment is kind of an enabler. It's an enabler. It allows you to create. So I like that. And also the fact that, my husband works here. Today, I'm not contributing to our family expenses. So it was important that, we stay in a place where one of us is still able to have a stable income and is able to support the family. So I think that's a key thing. And I really like this country in terms of, the ability to connect to anywhere in Africa. Kenya is really well connected. We have a lot of hub here. And, I get to be in West Africa in 5 hours and 40 minutes. And so, no, I really like the place, and it's a great hub to be in. It's not the largest economy in Kenya, but it's definitely one of the most innovative economy on the continent. It's definitely one of the best places to live on the continent.
Okay, thank you. And the last question is, do you think there is opportunity for you to collaborate with the business people, investor from Asia? For example, assuming that you're meeting with a potential investor from Asia, what do you want to tell him to make him excited about the opportunity in Kenya, or the related to your business?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. The answer is yes. So I think if you look at Africa right now, I think most places on the continent are where some parts of Asia were 30 years ago. And in terms of opportunity, I think some markets in Asia are now reaching maturity with declining growth in some industry. Like, I was shocked to read a couple of months back that Thailand is now raising money at 1.2% on the dollar. Countries in sub-Saharan Africa raise money between 6 and 9. A country like Nigeria raised money at 6%, 7%, 8% on the dollar. So that just gives you an idea that we still have a lot of upside here, because there are a lot of things to be done and there is a lot of value that is still locked. And so for an Asian investor, I'll say, look, the great thing that you have going with Finlo is that we have worked with international investors on this continent for the last 7 years. I've worked with, European investors, American investors, and other type of investors, Middle East as well. And so we know how to work with them, and we are also able to provide returns while managing your risk and mitigating the risk, because we know the continent. We've been working here for 7 years on different geographies: East Africa, Southern Africa, West Africa. And we're able to, kind of diversify your risk from, some Asian markets that are reaching maturity and still provide you with an exposure to very exciting industry, agribusinesses, and to a very dynamic sector, the small and medium-sized sector. So I think you have, the good thing with Finlo is that, yes, we're a small platform, but in very dynamic market and with very good knowledge of working with international investors.
Very good. Okay, I have finished all the questions. Thank you so much for joining the show today and sharing your interesting story. I really hope that you are able to connecting the dots on your entrepreneurship journey and making great success. I would like to invite you to my podcast again in the next year or so. So here again, your interesting war story in a jungle with great success, right?
Yeah, no, sure. Thank you so much, David. It was great doing this. And, anytime you need me, I'll love to keep you updated of where Finlo is going and where I'm going as an entrepreneur as well.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed and learned something from the topic. By the way, you can follow me on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share with your friend and drop me a review. I love to hear what you guys think. Talk to you soon. Thank you.